Hey guys, it's Leigh with So Raven Farms. Today we're going to talk about February garden chores. Now I missed January's garden chores because I forgot. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm sorry. But the reason we're starting with February, besides the fact that I forgot to start in January, is because I just placed a massive seed order. We're talking about $250 worth of seeds because I have a problem. In my introduction, usually I have this whole big long spiel about how, chaos creator and, consider me your partner in crime. And I will never tell you that you have too many seeds. Like I have no shit. I have a box on the front porch right now that I really need to bring in the house because it's been raining for like 3 days. I have a box on my porch that weighs about 175 to 100 pounds, and it is seed. Now that is cover crop and pasture seed and wildflower seeds and all of that, but it's still seed. Because I have a problem. And it's called gardening. So I will never, ever, ever tell you not to have a seed stash. And I will never, ever, ever tell you that you have too many seeds. I will not limit you like that. But sometimes I wish that, okay. So you know how bookworms, you cannot take a bookworm into a bookstore with a credit card. Okay. I'm a bookworm and a gardener. So you give me a credit card and I'm going to spend it on books and seeds. That's just how my life works. So anyways, February garden chores, it's intense. I'm not gonna lie. It's a very exciting time for me. If you hear me clicking in the background, pulling up my notes because I'm not gonna lie, I kind of already forgot what I was going to talk about, except for I know that we're talking about the February garden, but I could go way down the rabbit hole. And I'm pretty sure nobody wants to listen to all of that. So, February garden chores, what are we starting with? So usually in February, it's pretty cold still, and a lot of people are not able to do anything. Especially if you live, anywhere where there's a winter. Now we don't actually get winter by northern standards. I'm originally from Rhode Island, although I was not raised there. I was raised down in Georgia. But I have visited often enough in the winter to know that Georgia doesn't get winters. That's not what we get. Like we get the northern fall is really what the South gets. But in the South, we have like 9 million different bugs that are going to kill you. And then we've got 20 million different snakes that'll kill you. And then we have, mosquitoes the size of hummingbirds. So is it really that bad? Yes, it is. So anyways, I am located in the Northeast Georgia mountains. We're in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, which is really mind-boggling to understand. I actually have a cliff on my property. Didn't know that until I went down to our pond and I happened to look over and I'm like, holy shit, like that's a cliff. Like there's no other way around it. That's a freaking cliff. So it is a little bit mind-boggling when you stop and consider that. So sorry, I'm trying to get my screen the way I want it. I really need a split screen, but that's not in the budget right now. So for those of you, okay, so I don't really follow the zone template, if you will, the zone 7, zone this, zone that. But there's a lot of people that do. I don't, for the most part, because 99% of the plants that I am planting are perennials. They're annuals. So an annual is something that you're only going to get one use out of. And a perennial is something that is going to come back, hopefully, year after year after year. Now, there are certain things that are grown that are technically perennials, but they're grown as annuals. Peppers being one of them. If you live in an environment that it stays warm enough long enough, it is a perennial. It'll come back year after year. But the vast majority of the things that I am planting, it doesn't matter what zone we're in because they're only going to last a year. Right. So what I go by is my frost dates. Now, I have noticed in our little microclimate over the last 3 years that we've been here, the old timers say around here, and I don't know how it is anywhere else, but the old timers around here say you plant after Good Friday and you'll be good to go. And so I'd have to actually look and see what Good Friday is this year. I probably should figure that out. Google. Let's see. When is Good Friday 2024? All right. So it says March 29th is Good Friday. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think I'm going to be planting on March 29th because there's a really good, I mean, that's 15, 16 or so days until my official last frost. But what we do, and maybe we do this backwards, I don't know, is we will put our plants, we'll start hardening off April 1st-ish, depending on the weather. But every single thing that we do hinges on the 10-day forecast. So if we're seeing a frost at any point within that 10-day forecast, we don't plant anything outside. Well, we'll plant it if it's things like corn, zucchini, some melons. Like we can plant it, but we really pay attention to what that weather says. But our transplants, we will not put our transplants out to harden off until we have a 10-day stretch of good solid weather. And the reason for that is because it snowed on January 1st, or not January 1st, March 1st one year. It started out, 60 degrees in the morning. And then by that afternoon, we were getting dumped on. And it was a complete, if I remember correctly, the weathermen didn't even know that we were supposed to get that much snow. So all of that being said, what I do is going to be different than what you do and different than what your climate needs. So just be aware of that as we're kind of going through farm chores. Okay. Like if you live in Minnesota in February, we all know you're not starting anything. Right? Like you could start something, but there's a really good chance that your ground isn't even going to be thawed out to start working until April or May. So take this with the understanding that we are located in the Northeast Georgia mountains. We are in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and we're in zone 7B, technically 8A or 8B. I don't remember. It changed, but I don't go by it because I go off of my frost dates. So there are a lot of things happening on the homestead in February to start with. That is our spring kidding season. That's when we have a lot of babies being born. In fact, I'm recording this early because who knows what February is going to bring. It's going to be pretty insane for me. So I'm actually recording this in January, and I'm actually waiting on Bella's baby to be born because she got tangled up with Midas a little sooner than I wanted her to, but that's okay. We can make that work. So we've got, goat kids that are being born. We're trying to get, projects wrapped up. We're trying to make sure that we have everything we need for the garden season, for the homestead, kind of, sometimes putting out fires depending on, what the weather's doing. Like yesterday, Jared had to go chop some more firewood. Well, we weren't anticipating having to do that yesterday. But as far as February garden chores, for us, the big ones that we're looking at is we're finalizing garden plans. We're checking our seed inventories. We're checking out, our garden stuff, making sure we've got everything. And then we're starting seeds. And again, for some of you that are in a colder environment, that sounds bizarre. And it is. But we have, you got to think here in exactly 3 months, I'm going to be planting. Like it's January 12th. I know I'm recording early. But it's January 12th, and in exactly 3 months, 90 days, I'm going to be planting my summer garden, right? Like, that's mind boggling. If I go off of what the old timers say, which is Good Friday, I could realistically be planting my garden in about 65 to 70 days. That's not a lot of time. And so you have to adjust this as you go. So keeping that in mind, take these pieces of advice for what they are, their advice, and make them work for you. Now, before we get too far into this, I do have a couple of shameless plugs. First is going to be our garden, our 365-day garden journal prompts. My garden journal starts on January 1st and it runs until December 31st. That's my personal garden journal that I write in. That being said, your garden journal will start whenever the hell you want it to start, but I strongly encourage that you have a garden journal. Now, I've got two different ones. I've got the 365-day garden prompt. It's a one-time purchase. I want to say it is, standby. Sorry, I guess I should have brought this up beforehand, but that would have been way too much fun. The 365-day prompt is $17. You get all 300, actually, I think it's like 370 prompts. And that will hold you for the year. And then, of course, you can reuse it year after year. And then the garden journal subscription is $10 a month. And I email you twice a week. And I send you tasks and homework and have you been and what can we do? And it's definitely more hands-on on my end. And I hold your hand as we go through the garden season. What do you need? What are you looking for? What have you done? That is all in those garden journal prompts that I send you, again, twice a week. So that's that. Those two shameless plugs. And then the third one is our seed inventory. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. But I'm sorry, this coffee is delicious, but it's trying to fight back. So let's get into this. The first of my February garden chore is to finalize the garden plans. Now, we have had a very wet January, so I'm not sure if we're going to get into February's garden plans on time. But the big thing here is, what are your plans for the garden? We've talked about this before. How are you planning your garden? And then, what are you going to put in your garden? Right. So I just, we'll talk about the seed order in a minute. Anyways, I have a ton of flowers that I'm starting this year to put in the garden. But the most important thing in the garden is not the flowers, although they are important. It's actually the food that's coming out of the garden. So I need to make sure that, well, yes, I love my sunflowers. If it is taking up space that needs to be used for pumpkins or squash or, tomatoes or whatever, that needs to move, right? Those vegetables that are going to feed my family and my livestock are more important than the beauty of the flowers. However, that's not to say that I can't have both. It's just, finalizing those plans. How much space do I actually have? Will I actually have? And, making those decisions on what I'm starting and planting. The other thing is that, I'm having to trust the process. Jared knows what he's doing. He knows how much time he needs. I'm having a mini panic attack every time I think about it. January, he's supposed to be cutting down the trees inside the garden, because remember, we're expanding out the garden. He is supposed to be cutting down the trees in January. He's going to build the fence in February, and he's going to build the beds in March. And I am panicking because it is January 12th and not a single tree has been cut down in the big garden. Now, that being said, he has been slammed with all sorts of stuff. Then on the days that he's not slammed, it's raining. So it's not his fault. It's not like he's sitting there, I don't want to do it, so I'm not going to do it. It's not like that. It is very much, every time he tries to do it, it starts raining. or the chainsaw breaks, or the boys need help with something. And so the poor man is sitting here trying to get everything done, and he just friggin' can't. So even if, like, I know that the trees will get dropped and I know that the fence will get done, the beds may or may not get done. And if that's the case, that's okay. I'll have to make it work. And if it doesn't work, then I'll just, build temporary beds and throw plants on the ground. That's what I do. Like, it's not a big deal. The beds aren't a make or break, but they are definitely going to make it a lot easier for me to get into the garden and do what I need to do. The next big one that, so I told you at the start of this that I'm a seed hoarder on a scale of 1 to 10, or 0 to 10, 0 being you don't buy seeds at all, and 10 being that you have a giant silver shelving thingy in your living room that holds all of your seeds. I'm a 10. I went to Hobby Lobby and I spent $200 on this seed. It's a storage container rack thing. I'll take a picture of it and I'll put it on Instagram. But anyways, actually I think I already have. And it holds all of my seeds, all of them. Now, thankfully they all fit in there, but I literally just spent like $250, almost $300 on seeds, because I'm insane. Like, that's just what it is. I'm insane. And I won't stop anytime soon, because when you're planting, and I think this is the big thing that a lot of people don't understand when they're like, well, why do you need so many seeds? I usually strive to plant 150 tomato plants. I usually put about 75 pepper plants in the ground, and on average about 15 or so cherry tomatoes. That's just the basics, right? That doesn't even consider summer squash, zucchini, winter squash, pumpkin, sunflowers, okra, potatoes, all of the herbs in that I grow. That is just 3 things. So I need a ton of seeds, and each seed packet for the tomatoes is, between 50 and 100, depending on the variety and all of that. Like, sometimes I've gotten seed packets that only have like 10 tomato seeds in them. And so keep that in mind when we're talking about how many, seed packets I have in my seed container, but we're not talking about that. We're just going to talk about the fact that you don't need to buy seeds right now. In fact, February is probably the worst time to buy seeds. Because everybody's gearing up for the garden season. Your hardcore gardeners, me, know not to buy seeds in January. However, we do it anyways, because why not? And we do it in February. And I will place more seed orders as I go through and I find out that I don't have enough seeds. Or there's a new variety. There is a black cat variety for pumpkin, black pumpkin. And I want it so bad. So bad. I got to find it. So those are the types of seeds that you should be purchasing if you're purchasing outside of summer. And I say that because a lot of times, like, Botanical Interest is who I just bought seeds from, and I love Botanical Interest. Their variety of seeds is pretty good. It's not as good as, some of these other places, and that's okay. But they have some of the best information on their seed packets. Now, I'm not affiliated with them at all. I wish I was. Botanical Interest, contact me, because I love your seeds. Their seed packet has front and back. Inside the packet, sometimes it folds open even more. It's huge. It has all this information on, the seed packet that I lose every time. But that's okay, because we tried. But yeah, like, I love Botanical Interest. They have a black cat pumpkin that I'm maybe for my birthday. Anyways, the big thing for February when it comes to your seeds is doing your seed inventory. Now, I have I have two. I have the one that I created that's for sale. It's like $7 on my Etsy store, and also my Thrive cart. And I will add both of those to the description of this. But that is where I put all of my seeds that I purchase. All of them. And it's a lot. Like it's a 2-day process to go through all of my seeds. I could probably get it done in one day, but then I, squirrel out and I got to go get coffee. Coffee break, stand by. So, God, this coffee's so good. Anyways, you need to have a seed inventory for a lot of reasons. The big ones right off the top of my head. One, you need to know where you bought those seeds. Especially the more obscure the seed is, right? Like the black cat pumpkin. I have only found that on Botanical Interest website. It's the only place I've found it so far. Cumin is a very common plant, but you can't find cumin at every single seed store. So making sure that you know exactly where you got that particular seed is amazing. Like you literally cannot beat it. But I am kind of that weird mix between I really love technology and I am super old school. Like I hand jam everything. I am constantly writing shit down. Because I like having paper copies. Now, if you don't like having paper copies, a digital one is great. But if you don't have a digital seed journal, you can check out mine. I'll put a link down below. But I also have a ledger book, and I'll link the one that I use in the description as well. And that fulfills my hand jam, right? Where I got to write stuff down. It fulfills that. But it really does help because I can take that into the garden with me as I start planting. Like as I take it into the greenhouse and I use up my last of the mortgage lifter tomato, right? I've used up the last of it. Now I need to order more. Now I put that in my my seed inventory, and it tells me, when I go through it again, that I need to order, the mortgage lifter tomato, and I need to order the Sweet 1 Million tomato, and I need to do this and I need to do that. It gives me that information right there, and I don't have to worry about trying to find it later. And I can take that to my digital seed journal and scroll through and try to figure out where I bought the Sweet 1 Million from, and then click that link. Now I can go purchase the Sweet 1 Million. And that's why I have both. Regardless, you need to have one. And a lot of people will put this in their garden journal. I don't, because my garden journal is a 1-year deal. Like there could still be pages, although the goal is to not have any pages in a garden journal left over at the end of the year. There may still be pages left in that journal that are blank, but I will not, as soon as December 31st rolls around, that garden journal is done. I don't care how many pages are left in it. It's done. And that keeps me on track so that all of the information, I know when I pull out 2020's garden journal, I am only going to have 2020 information in there. And that's huge. That's going to be really helpful for you. Another little piece of advice: prep your garden stuff before you need it. Okay. I don't know if anybody knows this. I didn't know this until a couple years ago. Did you know that shovels are supposed to be sharp? Like sharp. Like you are supposed to sharpen your shovels. I had no idea. It makes total sense, but I had no idea. And the reason why they come from the store dull is because people are people. Let's just be real. People are dumb. And somebody's going to drop a shovel on their foot and slice themselves open. And the store or the manufacturer is going to have a lawsuit. That's why. But you are supposed to go home and you are supposed to sharpen your shovels. So go ahead and make sure that your pruning shears are sharp. All of your stuff is sharp and clean. I want to say I forget what exactly the bleach solution is. I want to say it's like a 1 or 3% bleach solution that you wash all of your tools in, to make sure that you're not, bringing any diseases into your garden. And the other thing that a lot of people miss and don't do is you need to wash your pots. Every year you need to sanitize your pots, because if you had something weird growing in your soil and it killed a bunch of plants, and then you turn around and repot in that soil, in that cup, you have now introduced more shit to your baby plant, and it's not going to grow. So make sure that you're cleaning everything. Make sure that everything is sharpened, ready to go. If you have not gotten a garden journal yet, go ahead and purchase one. I've got a link for you as well. Listen, when it comes to gardening, I love it. I'm a student of the garden. I'm constantly learning. I love everything about the garden. I don't care if the entire thing dies. I prefer it does not, because I would like to eat some of it. But I want to learn how to be the best gardener that I can possibly be. And I know damn well that I'm going to be 90 years old with my great grandkids helping me in the garden, and I'm still not going to know everything. And that's okay. I'm totally cool with that. But I'm also going to have like 60 years of garden journals to look back on too. So make sure that you have your garden journals. I'm going to link it down in the show notes so that you have it. But it's actually not just, checking your supplies and all of that. It's making sure that your compost. So if you haven't, you're kind of screwed. But every fall, late fall, winter, every year you should get, whatever size tote you need, whether that you have a big garden like I do, so you need a bigger tote, or you've got a smaller garden. It doesn't matter. You need to get a tote and fill it with soil from your garden, some compost from your compost bins, whatever, and bring it into the house, especially if you get super cold winters. Our ground rarely freezes, and if it does freeze, it's only freezing a couple of inches. So we can absolutely get out there and work our soil year round. So I don't really have to worry about that. But the flip side to that is make sure that you have plenty of compost, plenty of soil, plenty of amendments, plenty of everything that you need prior to going into the garden season. Now, clearly, if you don't know you need it, then you don't know you need it. But if you know that you need soil, you know that you need compost, you know that you need, kelp or some other natural fertilizer, go ahead and purchase that stuff now while it's cheap and available, rather than in March, April, May, June, when you're actually planting your garden and it's not available and you can't find it anywhere. So make sure you have that stuff on hand now when you don't need it, because when you need it, you're never going to find it. That's how it works. The other thing that I do is I make sure my greenhouse is ready. Now, this is our first year with the greenhouse, and so we're kind of playing this by ear, but I have a propane heater thing. Like, I don't know what it's actually called, but it's the little heater element that sits on top of your propane tank. I've got one of those, and it's in the greenhouse. We've got plenty of ventilation in the greenhouse, so I'm not worried about that. But I've got one of those in there. I'm not turning it on just yet. One, because I haven't planted anything, but two, I want to see how well that greenhouse will hold temperature. And right now it's hovering about 15 degrees or so warmer than the outside air. So that's pretty good, considering the fact that it's, single pane, old windows, and, plastic roof. So it's not too bad. I'll take it. It's definitely, guys, so pretty. I love my greenhouse. Finally, it's time to start seeds. Now, we usually will start our seeds closer to March, depending on what's going on. And again, we base ours off of the weather. We also follow the lunar planting cycle, not so much the date planting cycle, which is part of the reason why you'll hear the old timers say, Good Friday planting, or you'll hear only plant this under a full moon, or only do this under this time. Those are called lunar planting schedule. I forget what the actual term is, but I call it moon planting, and that's when you figure out exactly when to plant your gardens based off of the moon cycle. And actually, I've had a lot more success with that than I have ever had following like lockstep frost dates and all that stuff. So usually closer to March, but sometimes mid-February, I start all of my spring stuff. So cilantro, I'll put my rosemary back outside. I've got a huge rosemary bush. She'll go back outside. Kohlrabi, broccoli, all that stuff. Sorry. The coffee keeps trying to fight back. All my cold, cool, loving things will get started here in the next, February 15th or so. Like, it's not a hard set date. It really depends on what that greenhouse will hold. And I'll go ahead and start some of that stuff. Now, as long as the temperature in the greenhouse doesn't drop below 40, those different things will absolutely germinate, and they'll germinate beautifully. Depending on the weather and depending on how much I'll cry if my seeds die, I will actually go ahead and start some of my tomatoes and peppers. Really, this year, it's an experiment. I plan on starting them in March when, the days are longer, there's more heat in the greenhouse. And I'll even go so far as to turn on that little heater and see what happens. But anything that is warm weather, i.e., squash, pumpkins, peppers, tomatoes, whatever, all that stuff that is grown in the summer, if I start any of that, it will be 100% for experimentation only. It is not to sit there and figure out, to try to stretch the season any more or less. It is straight up, let's just see if this works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, okay. And guess what I'll do? I'll put that in my garden notes, in my garden journal, so that I know exactly when to plant for the greenhouse and what the weather is doing and all of that. So, my other big thing with starting seeds, you're going to get bit by the bug. Everybody does. It happens to everybody. And we're so excited to get the garden started and the greenhouse and all of the things. We're so excited to get our hands in the dirt. Do not, for the love of God, do not ever plant all of your seeds in February. Don't do it. All of your pepper plants, don't do it. I know it's hard. I know you want to. Don't. What you want to do is you want to plant in 2-week increments, right? So you're going to plant, if your goal at the end of, starting all of your transplants, if your goal is to have 150 tomato plants to go into the garden, what you're going to do is you're going to divide that by how many weeks you have for your tomato plants to grow and get harvested and all that stuff. And you're going to say, okay, I'm going to plant, 10. I'm going to plant 10 now, and in 2 weeks, I'm going to plant another 10 in 2 weeks, another 10 in 2 weeks, another 10 in 2 weeks, another 10. And you're going to keep going down like that so that all of your tomatoes don't come in at the same time. Now, there are certain times when that is ideal, like you're trying to preserve. And you can do a big batch if you know that it's going to take, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, guys, do not quote me. If you know that it's going to take 10 weeks for your tomato to go from tomato to dead, harvested, you have pulled everything off of that tomato that it's going to possibly give you, and you know that it's going to take 10 weeks. What I would do is I would say, all right, I know that it's going to take 10 weeks from planting the seed to harvesting the very last tomato that it's going to give me. I'm going to plant all of those tomatoes right here in this time frame. So if I want to, can a whole bunch of tomatoes in July, I'm going to count back 10 weeks. Right? If that makes sense. And so that way, you're not sitting there with onesies and twosies coming in the garden and you're like, I don't have enough to make a pot, a pot of sauce. I don't have enough to make fill a canner full of sauce. Those are some ways that you can do that and get away with it without, killing yourself with drowning in tomatoes. I've already talked about my amateur tips. I think that's it. I think that's all I got for you today. Those are your my February garden chores. If you don't live in zone 7B, maybe don't take this for, gospel, but this is what I'm doing in February. And I hope that you guys have a good rest of your day.